Tokyo police have arrested a 27-year-old man after finding multiple dismembered bodies in his apartment. They discovered the gruesome crime scene while looking for a 23-year-old woman who disappeared last week. The bodies were hidden in coolers and covered in cat litter. Officials say the suspect admitted to the murder. He dismembered the bodies in his bathroom using a toolbox police found. Authorities believe they have found 9 victims.
Most serial killers spend years developing a method. They study, they plan, they work out how to find victims without getting caught. Takahiro Shiraishi did not need years. He needed a smartphone and a Twitter account. And in the span of just 2 months, 9 people were dead. This is not a story about a monster hiding in the shadows. This is a story about a man who operated completely in the open, on one of the most public platforms on the internet. And somehow nobody stopped him until it was far too late. Takahiro Shiraishi was born in 1990 in Zama, a small city in Kanagawa Prefecture, Japan. By his mid-20s, he had already cycled through several jobs, including a brief stint working at a dating service where he learned something that would later become deeply disturbing in hindsight. He learned how to find lonely people, how to talk to them, how to make them feel heard. By 2017, he was largely unemployed, living alone in an apartment in Zama and spending most of his time online. On the surface, nothing about him stood out. Quiet neighbor, kept to himself, the kind of person who disappears into the background of a city. But on Twitter, he had a strategy. Japan has one of the highest suicide rates among developed nations. And on Japanese Twitter, there existed a community of people openly expressing suicidal thoughts. People in genuine crisis, posting about wanting to die, looking for someone who understood. These posts were not hidden. They were public, tagged, searchable. Shiraishi searched for them deliberately. He would find accounts of young women posting about suicide, reach out in the replies or direct messages, and present himself as someone who understood their pain, someone who had been there. He told some victims he was suicidal himself. He told others he could help them die peacefully, together, as a pact. He positioned himself not as a predator, but as a companion in suffering. Between August and October 2017, 9 people, 8 women and 1 man, visited Shiraishi's apartment in Zama. None of them came back out. After each killing, Shiraishi dismembered the bodies and stored the parts in coolers and toolboxes inside the apartment, concealing the smell with cat litter and other materials. He continued living there. He continued using Twitter. He continued reaching out to new victims while the remains of previous ones were stored a few feet away. For 2 months, nobody knew. Not neighbors, not family members of the missing, not police. The apartment was ordinary from the outside. The man inside was unremarkable to look at. And the victims, because they had been in crisis and had often spoken openly about wanting to disappear, were sometimes not immediately reported missing or were assumed to have left on their own. The case broke open not because of sophisticated detective work, but because of a missing persons report. A 23-year-old woman had gone missing after posting suicidal content on Twitter. Her brother tracked her last known Twitter interactions, found messages pointing toward Shiraishi, and went to the police. Officers visited the apartment in late October 2017. What they found inside stopped the investigation in its tracks. 9 victims, body parts stored in containers throughout the apartment, evidence of what had happened to each of them. Shiraishi was arrested immediately. He was calm. He did not run. He confessed. In police interviews, he was disturbingly composed. He explained his method in detail. He said he had targeted suicidal women specifically because he believed they would be less likely to be reported missing quickly and more likely to come to him willingly. He had calculated it. He had refined it over 2 months like a system. The trial, Shiraishi's trial, took place in 2020. He did not deny what he had done. His defense attempted to argue that some of the victims had consented to a suicide pact, which would have reduced the charge for murder. The court rejected this entirely. The evidence showed that victims had been restrained and that the circumstances of their deaths were not consistent with any kind of agreement. In December 2020, Takahiro Shiraishi was sentenced to death. He accepted the sentence without appeal. The Zama murders forced a genuinely uncomfortable conversation across Japan and eventually across the world. Because the problem was not just one man, the problem was the platform, the vulnerability, and the gap between them. Twitter, to its credit, did respond. Suicide-related searches on Japanese Twitter were modified to show crisis resources rather than open community posts. The visibility of certain tagged content was reduced. But the broader question, Hyusu Ayuru, how do you protect people in crisis who are actively reaching out in public spaces online, did not have a clean answer then, and still does not have one now. Shiraishi found 9 people in 2 months. He was not technically sophisticated, he did not hack anything. And that is the part of this story that does not go away when the case closes. The method was simple enough that the only real barrier between it and the victims was the platform's willingness to notice. For 2 months, it did not notice. 9 people went to an apartment looking for someone who understood them. They found the opposite. And the man who sat across from them had found them the same way anyone finds anything online, by searching for exactly what he wanted.